The elevator doors opened with a soft chime on the top floor of Vance Dynamics. My heart hammered against my ribs, heavy with excitement. 3 months. 3 long, brutal months in a rehabilitation facility 3 states away, recovering from spinal surgery that almost left me paralyzed. I clutched a small box of bakery pastries in my right hand and my cane in the left. I couldn't wait to see their faces. I was going to surprise Chloe, my wife, and Marcus, my childhood best friend and co-founder. Together, we had built this company from a leaky garage into a $50 million software giant. I shuffled down the polished glass hallway. It was strangely quiet for a Tuesday afternoon. When I reached the main boardroom, I pushed the heavy oak door open, a wide grin spreading across my face. "Surprise, everyone," I called out. The words died in my throat. Marcus was sitting at the head of the conference table. He was wearing my custom navy suit, his legs crossed comfortably over the marble surface. He wasn't working. He was sipping scotch from my favorite crystal glass. "Ethan," Marcus said smoothly. He didn't look surprised. He didn't stand up to hug me. "You're back earlier than expected." "Marcus? What's going on?" I glanced around the empty boardroom. "Where is the board?" "We had the quarterly review scheduled for today." "The board meeting ended an hour ago, Ethan," Marcus replied, lowering his glass with a slow, deliberate clink. "And we made some major structural adjustments." My chest tightened. "Adjustments? Without me? I'm the chief executive officer. You can't hold a voting meeting without the majority shareholder present." Marcus smiled. It wasn't the warm, brotherhood smile I had known for 15 years. It was cold, calculated, and sharp. He reached down, picked up a thick blue folder, and slid it across the long table toward me. "Read page 4, Ethan," he said quietly. I stepped forward, my cane tapping loudly against the floor. My hands trembled as I opened the folder. The top page had official legal letterhead. My eyes scanned down to the signature page at the bottom. There it was. My signature. Clear as day. "What is this?" My voice cracked. "This is the authorization for temporary power of attorney. I signed this before my surgery so you could handle basic operational expenses while I was under anesthesia." "You should have read the fine print, my friend," Marcus said, leaning back. "You didn't just sign over temporary operational power. You signed a full, irrevocable transfer of voting equity and intellectual property rights to the board, which, as of 2 hours ago, is officially controlled entirely by me." "You tricked me," I yelled, slamming my fist onto the table. Pain shot up my arm, but I barely felt it. "I was heavily medicated, Marcus. I was going into a major spinal operation. You told me it was routine paperwork for payroll. And you trusted me," Marcus sneered. "That was your first mistake. Business doesn't care about trust, Ethan. You were soft. You spent too much time dreaming about software architecture and not enough time protecting your throne. I built this company," I shouted, step by step closing the distance between us. "Every single line of core code in our primary product was written by my hands. You can't just kick me out." "Actually, I can. And I just did," Marcus said smoothly. He reached under the desk and pressed the intercom button. "Security, please come up to the penthouse suite." "You bastard." I lunged forward, but my weak leg buckled under me. I stumbled, dropping the box of pastries. They scattered uselessly across the expensive carpet. Before I could push myself up, the boardroom door swung open again. High heels clicked against the floor. "Ethan? What is all this noise?" I looked up from the floor, my vision blurring with tears. "Chloe." My wife stood in the doorway, dressed in a sleek red dress I had bought her for our 5th anniversary. But she didn't look at me with concern. She walked past me as if I were a stain on the rug and stood directly beside Marcus. Marcus reached out, winding his arm around her waist. Chloe didn't pull away. She leaned into him, resting her head gently on his shoulder. The air pulled completely out of my lungs. "Chloe, what are you doing?" I whispered, my voice breaking into a million pieces. "What is this?" She looked down at me, her brown eyes completely hollow. "Get up, Ethan. Stop making a scene. You look pitiful." "He stole the company," I yelled, pushing myself up with my cane, my chest heaving. "He forged documents. He betrayed me. How can you stand next to him?" "He didn't steal anything, Ethan," Chloe said coldly. "He took charge. Something you haven't done in years. Do you know what it was like living with you? Always stressed, always obsessing over code and then getting sick? I didn't sign up to be a nurse to a broken man." "A broke man?" I stared at her, utterly stunned. "Everything you wear, the house you live in, the life you have, I gave you all of it. And Marcus is going to keep giving it to me, she replied, her voice completely devoid of pity. We're over, Ethan. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. Marcus is everything you failed to be. Chloe, please? I rasped. We've been together for 10 years. And those 10 years were a waste, she interrupted sharply. Accept reality. You lose. Two heavy-set security guards walked into the room. They looked at me with slight embarrassment, but they stepped forward anyway. Mr. Vance, one of them said softly, we need you to leave the premises. Marcus shoved a black trash bag across the table. It slid off the edge and hit my boots. Your desk is already cleared out, Marcus said, taking another sip of his scotch. Don't come back, Ethan. If you step foot on this property again, I'll have you arrested for trespassing. I looked at Chloe one last time, begging her with my eyes to show a single flash of the woman I married. She turned her back on me and poured herself a drink. I knelt down, my knee popping violently with pain, and picked up the trash bag containing the shattered remnants of my life. I didn't say another word. I turned around and walked out into the cold, gray rain, completely ruined. The rain battered against the cracked glass of the tiny window. Raindrops dripped onto the linoleum floor, tapping a steady beat that sounded like a ticking clock marking my failure. I lay on a threadbare couch in an apartment that smelled of damp mold and old grease, staring at the ceiling stains. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus took my company and Chloe threw away 10 years of marriage like trash. 3 weeks of numb, suffocating silence. The front door unlocked with a loud click, letting in a gust of cold air. My younger brother, Liam, walked inside carrying a plastic grocery bag and a beat-up wooden box. Ethan? Liam set the bag on the rickety kitchen table. You still haven't turned on the lights. I don't need lights, I muttered, my voice raspy from disuse. Saves money. You're not paying the electric bill anyway, man. I am, Liam sighed. He walked over and kicked the side of the couch gently. Sit up. I brought hot soup. You need to eat something that didn't come out of a microwave wrapper. I'm not hungry, Liam. I don't care if you're hungry, Liam said firmly, grabbing my shoulder and forcing me upright. Look at yourself. You were the CEO of a $50 million empire a month ago. Now you're rotting in my spare room staring into space. You can't let Marcus win like this. He already won. I shouted, the sudden anger bursting through my numbness. Pain flared in my recovering back, but I ignored it. He took the company. He took the stock equity. He took Chloe. I have $600 in my checking account and a bad leg. What do you want me to do, Liam? Magic up a new life. I want you to fight. Liam snapped back, his eyes flashing with frustration. I want my brother back. The guy who used to code 18 hours a day in a basement because he believed he could change the world. That guy was an idiot, I said softly, dropping my head into my hands. That guy trusted his best friend. He trusted his wife. Every time I close my eyes, I hear Marcus laughing at me. I hear Chloe telling me I look pitiful. They didn't just rob me, Liam. They erased me. Liam remained silent for a long moment. He took a deep breath, walked back to the table, and picked up the heavy wooden box he had brought in with him. Mom asked me to empty Dad's old storage unit yesterday, Liam said, his tone shifting into something quieter, heavier. He set the box directly onto my lap. I frowned down at the worn oak surface. Why are you giving me this now? Because Dad always said you were the only one smart enough to understand what was inside it, Liam said. Open it, Ethan. My fingers hesitated over the rusted metal latch. Dad had passed away 5 years ago, right as Vance Dynamics was starting to take off. He had been a brilliant systems engineer but a terrible businessman. With a low creak, I flipped the lid back. Inside lay stacks of yellowed paper, handwritten notebook pages, and 3 black encrypted hard drives labeled with Dad's neat handwriting. Project Ether, unfinished. My breath hitched in my throat. Dad's architectural notes. Do you remember what Marcus asked Dad right before he died? Liam leaned in, pointing at the hard drives. Marcus tried to buy those drives from Dad for $50,000. Dad refused. He told Marcus that the logic structures were too dangerous in the wrong hands. I pulled out a sheaf of papers, my eyes scanning the hand-drawn logic flowcharts. I remember. Marcus spent months trying to reverse engineer Dad's core algorithms after the funeral, but he couldn't crack the security protocol. He called it dead code. Was it dead code? Liam asked. No, I whispered, my heart suddenly racing. The fog in my mind began to clear, replaced by a sharp, electrifying focus. Marcus couldn't crack it because he's a businessman, not a core builder. He never understood how Dad handled cross-platform encryption. But I do. I turned the page, tracing my finger across a complex array of handwritten logic trees. Dad had solved the fundamental bottleneck of decentralized data processing, the exact wall Vance Dynamics had been hitting for the past 3 years. This isn't just code, I said, my voice rising as the realization hit me like a thunderbolt. This is the next generation of server architecture. If this works, it makes Vance Dynamics' current software completely obsolete. Is it complete? Liam asked, leaning forward on his hands. Dad finished 70% of the foundational math, I said, looking up at my brother. He needed a neural net framework to bridge the final gap. 5 years ago, that tech didn't exist. Does it exist now? I wrote the foundation for that neural framework 6 months ago, I said, a dark, sharp grin pulling at the corners of my mouth for the first time in weeks. It's stored in my private personal cloud. Marcus doesn't even know it exists because he never understood the deep code layer. Liam smiled, clapping his hand hard onto my shoulder. So what are you saying? I'm saying Marcus stole an empty shell. I stood up, ignoring the dull ache in my leg, the wooden box clutched tightly against my chest. He took my name, he took my title, and he took a superficial woman who only cared about money. But he couldn't steal what's in my head. That's what I wanted to hear, Liam said softly. I need a high-powered workstation, 3 monitors, and a lot of coffee, I said, looking my brother in the eyes. I'm going to finish Dad's work. I have $2,000 saved up, Liam replied without hesitation. We'll buy the parts tonight. I will pay you back 1,000 times over, Liam, I promised. Just build it, Ethan, Liam grinned. Build it and make them regret the day they thought you were broken. I looked down at my father's handwriting, feeling a fierce, white-hot blaze ignite inside my chest. The self-pity was gone. The grief was dead. Marcus and Chloe thought they had left me with nothing. They were wrong. They had left me with nothing to lose. For 8 agonizing months, the world outside ceased to exist. I lived in a dim basement office paid for by Liam's savings, surrounded by hums of cooling fans and empty coffee mugs. Day and night fused into an endless stream of lines, syntax, and memory allocations. I merged my neural network framework with Dad's mathematical foundation. My back screamed in pain every night, but the fire inside my chest burned away every ache. You need to eat something, Ethan, Liam said, sliding a plate across my cluttered desk. You've been staring at that terminal for 16 hours straight. I just patched the final core leak, I replied, not breaking my gaze from the glowing green code. It's done, Liam. It actually works. Processing speeds are 40 times faster than Vance Dynamics' legacy platform. Liam leaned over my shoulder, staring at the benchmark graphs spiking across the screen. Unbelievable. This will completely destroy Marcus's current product line. That's the goal, I said grimly. Now we just need capital to launch it before Marcus secures his next funding round. I brought someone who might help with that, Liam said, stepping back toward the door. A sharp, confident voice echoed from the hallway. I hope your software is as impressive as your brother claims, Mr. Vance. A tall woman stepped into the fluorescent light of the basement. She wore a sharp charcoal business suit, her posture commanding authority. Dr. Evelyn Hayes, the legendary tech investor whose venture firm had built 3 tech unicorns and dismantled 2 fraudulent tech empires. Dr. Hayes, I said, rising quickly from my chair. I didn't expect you to come in person. I don't waste time with brokers when a potential industry disruption is on the line, Evelyn said smoothly, taking a seat opposite my desk. Your brother gave me a very brief summary of your platform's architecture. Show me what you have, Ethan. Look at this screen, I said, tapping a key. This is a real-time stress test simulating 50 million simultaneous encrypted requests. Evelyn leaned forward, her sharp blue eyes scanning the live data feed. For 3 tense minutes, the room was silent except for the click of my mouse. The resource load isn't moving, she said, a faint note of surprise in her voice. It's maintaining less than 5% server strain. Because my father's logic structure bypasses traditional data pipelines entirely, I explained. Marcus Sterling thinks he owns the future of server hardware, but he's sitting on an obsolete dinosaur. Speaking of Marcus, Evelyn said, looking up at me with a keen gaze. I read the trade news. He took full credit for your early patents after your departure. He stole them, I corrected flatly, along with everything else I built. I know, Evelyn said calmly. Marcus approached my firm last week seeking a $50 million expansion loan for Vance Dynamics. He presented a shiny presentation, but his underlying metrics looked suspicious. He's a salesman selling air. Are you going to fund him? I asked, my fists tightening by my side. I was considering it, Evelyn admitted. Until I saw this. What you've built here makes Vance Dynamics look like a toy. But I have a strict condition before I write you a check for $20 million. Name it, I said instantly. You remain in the shadows, Evelyn replied, her tone icy and precise. No press releases with your name. No media announcements. We launch under a shell enterprise called Ether Systems. I will act as the public face during initial corporate acquisitions. Why? Liam interjected, coming up beside me. Ethan deserves the credit. Because Marcus is arrogant, Evelyn said, turning to Liam before facing me again. If he knows Ethan is building a competitor, he will use Vance Dynamics' legal team to drown you in fraudulent injunctions before you scale up. But if he thinks he's fighting a nameless ghost, he will make reckless operational mistakes. She's right, I said, realizing her tactical wisdom. Marcus only plays dirty when he sees his opponent coming. If he thinks I'm broken, he'll leave his flanks wide open. Smart man, Evelyn smiled, thin, sharp smile. We let Marcus keep walking on air. Let him believe he won. When do we launch? I asked. Immediately, Evelyn said, pulling a leather folder from her coat and setting it on my desk. Contracts are inside. Funding transfers to your corporate account by midnight. Welcome back to the war, Ethan. Thank you, Dr. Hayes, I said, signing my name on the final line with steady hands. Over the next 4 weeks, Ether Systems launched silently. Major corporate clients began quietly canceling their renewals with Vance Dynamics, transferring their high-volume infrastructure over to our platform. Marcus's revenues started dropping, but his pride blinded him from investigating the root cause. One evening, while sitting in my private office at our new corporate headquarters, Liam tossed a shiny foil envelope onto my desk. What's this? I asked, picking it up. An invitation to the annual Tech Founders Gala next week, Liam said disgustedly. Marcus and Chloe sent them out to everyone in the industry. They're hosting it to celebrate their engagement and their pending investment deal with Evelyn's firm. I opened the card. Inside was a framed photo of Marcus and Chloe, both smiling brightly. Beneath it read, "Celebrating love, power, and the future of tech." They have no idea you're working with Dr. Hayes, Liam chuckled warmly. They think they're about to secure $50 million from her firm. I stared at Chloe's smiling face in the photograph. 8 months ago, that face looked down at me on a cold boardroom floor and told me I was nothing. Let them celebrate, I said, tossing the invitation directly into the trash can. Let them throw the biggest party of their lives. What are you going to do? Liam asked. I'm going to let Marcus walk right up to the edge of his dream, I said quietly, looking out over the city lights. And then I'm going to pull the rug right out from under his feet. The morning air felt crisp against my face as I walked down the street toward Ether Systems' confidential headquarters. I stopped at a high-end coffee shop 2 blocks away from my office to pick up drinks for Liam and myself. I was wearing my plain gray hoodie, faded jeans, and simple sneakers, my standard, comfortable coding attire. As I waited near the pickup counter, the brass bell above the entrance chimed loudly. Make sure they use almond milk, babe, a familiar, shrill voice echoed across the quiet cafe. My skin gets so sensitive before big events. Anything for my queen, a man replied smoothly. We have to look perfect for Dr. Hayes tonight. I froze. I knew those voices instantly. I turned around slowly, gripping my paper coffee cups. Chloe stood near the entrance, wrapped in a plush cream trench coat, wearing oversized designer sunglasses. Beside her stood Marcus, looking immaculate in a tailored dark suit, his hair slicked back with precise perfection. Chloe's gaze swept across the room and landed directly on me. Her eyebrows arched high above her sunglasses as a sneer formed across her lips. Well, 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 Chloe purred, taking a slow step toward me. Look what the rain washed in. Is that really you, Ethan? Marcus turned, his jaw dropping for a microsecond before his signature smug grin returned. Holy crap, it is. Ethan. Long time no see, buddy. Chloe. Marcus, I said, keeping my tone completely neutral. Look at you, Chloe scoffed, looking down at my worn sneakers with deep disgust. Still dressed like a college student living off ramen noodles? Are you still staying in that disgusting little apartment with your brother? I'm doing fine, Chloe, I answered quietly, standing my ground. Doing fine? Chloe laughed, a hard, mocking sound that drew stares from 2 nearby customers. Ethan, you're picking up cheap drip coffee in a place you clearly can't afford. You're still living in the past while the world moved on without you. Let him be, honey, Marcus said, putting a condescending hand on my shoulder. I didn't flinch. I just looked at his fingers until he slowly withdrew them, his grin widening. Life hits hard when you don't have the stomach for real leadership. How is Vance Dynamics doing, Marcus? I asked smoothly, leaning slightly against the counter. Marcus puffed out his chest, resting his hand casually on his waist to display a gleaming gold luxury watch on his wrist. Better than ever, my friend. We're finalizing a $50 million buyout and partnership deal with Hayes Investments tonight at the gala. Is that so? I murmured, raising an eyebrow. Dr. Evelyn Hayes herself is signing the capital release forms tonight, Marcus bragged, leaning in closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear. Once her cash hits our corporate account, Vance Dynamics goes public. I'll be a billionaire by midnight. And what do you have, Ethan? A broken leg and a trash bag full of old memories? You really think Dr. Hayes is going to hand you $50 million? I asked, looking directly into his arrogant eyes. Why wouldn't she? Chloe chimed in, stepping up beside Marcus and wrapping her arm through his. Marcus is a visionary. He took a dying, stagnant company and turned it into an industry powerhouse. You were holding him back, Ethan. Admitting that is the first step to moving on. She's right, Marcus smiled triumphantly. You built the initial sandbox, Ethan, I'll give you credit for that. But I turned it into a gold mine. You just didn't have the killer instinct. I see, I replied, keeping my expression completely unreadable. Congratulations on the deal, Marcus. I hope it gives you everything you deserve. Oh, it will, Marcus chuckled patronizingly. He pulled a crisp $100 bill from his leather wallet and tossed it onto the wooden counter beside my coffee cups. Here. Breakfast is on me today, big guy. Consider it a tip from your former CEO. Keep your money, Marcus, I said calmly. You might need it later. Chloe shook her head, pulling Marcus by the arm. Come on, babe. Don't waste your time talking to a defeated beggar. We have to get ready for the press conference. Right you are, my love, Marcus said, walking past me toward the barista. Enjoy your coffee, Ethan. Stay watching the news tonight, you might see us on TV. They walked away, laughing loudly as they ordered their expensive drinks, treating me like a ghost from a life they had long since discarded. They were so blinded by their own greed and arrogance that they didn't notice the sleek, black corporate shuttle waiting for me right outside the glass doors. They had no idea that Hayes Investments didn't write a single check without my personal green light. They had no idea that Ether Systems already owned 80% of Vance Dynamics' former clients. And they certainly had no idea that Dr. Hayes was meeting me in 1 hour to finalize their destruction. I picked up my 2 coffee cups, leaving Marcus's $100 bill lying untouched on the counter. I stepped out into the cool morning air and got into the back seat of my waiting town car. As the driver pulled away from the curb, I pulled my smartphone from my pocket. I opened my private messaging app and typed a short text to Dr. Evelyn Hayes. Marcus and Chloe just bragged about the buyout deal. Proceed with phase 2 tonight. Don't pull any punches. I hit send. A single green check mark appeared on the screen. I leaned back against the leather seat and took a slow sip of my coffee, a cold, calm smile finally touching my face. The grand ballroom of the Grand Hyatt Hotel hummed with the high-stakes energy of elite investors, tech moguls and camera flashes. Crystal chandeliers cast sharp light across the crowded room, highlighting expensive tuxedos and silk gowns. I stood near the grand entrance, straightening the cuffs of my bespoke charcoal tuxedo. Liam stood beside me, wearing a crisp suit of his own, unable to suppress a proud grin. Are you ready for this, Ethan? Liam asked quietly, leaning in closer. Once you walk through those doors, there's no going back. I've waited 8 months for this exact minute, Liam, I replied, my voice steady. Let's go. We walked into the center of the ballroom. Near the main stage, Marcus and Chloe were holding court surrounded by a small crowd of eager reporters and minor investors. Chloe looked radiant in a sweeping emerald dress, her neck adorned with a diamond necklace that I recognized. It was purchased with money Marcus had drawn from my former emergency reserve account. Marcus held a glass of champagne high in the air, laughing heartily. We are entering a new era, Marcus declared to the reporters, his voice projecting across the front section of the hall. Vance Dynamics is partnering with Hayes Investments tonight to secure $50 million in capital. We are leaving outdated code and obsolete mindsets behind. You certainly know how to put on a show, Marcus, a cold, sharp voice interrupted. Dr. Evelyn Hayes stepped up to the VIP podium on the stage, tapping the microphone twice. The entire room immediately quieted down. Good evening, everyone, Evelyn said, her voice echoing clearly through the speaker system. Tonight was meant to be the public celebration of our $50 million acquisition. But before I sign any documents, I need to introduce the visionary who actually built the infrastructure behind this entire deal. Marcus smiled brightly, stepping forward toward the stage while straightening his tie. He assumed she was calling him up. Thank you, Dr. Hayes. It has been an honor. I am not talking to you, Marcus, Evelyn cut in coolly, her sharp eyes locking onto mine at the back of the center aisle. I would like to welcome the true founder, chief executive officer, and chairman of Ether Systems, Ethan Vance. Gasps rippled through the ballroom like a wave. Marcus froze on the bottom step of the stage, his hand midair, his face draining of color. Beside him, Chloe gasped, her glass slipping from her fingers and shattering loudly on the hard floor. Ethan? Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking as she stared at me in total disbelief. What is he doing here? He's a nobody. He doesn't own anything. Shut up, Chloe. Marcus hissed through his teeth, panic bleeding into his eyes as I calmly walked past them up the stage stairs. I stepped up to the podium beside Evelyn. I looked directly down at Marcus, whose jaw was trembling. Ethan. Marcus stammered, taking a panicked step forward. What is this prank? Dr. Hayes, there must be a mistake. This man was terminated from Vance Dynamics 8 months ago. He has no standing here. There is no mistake, Mr. Sterling, Evelyn said smoothly into the microphone. Ether Systems has quietly acquired 80% of your former client portfolio over the last 4 months. Ethan Vance owns every piece of fundamental logic your current platform relies upon. In fact, Vance Dynamics has been operating on stolen architecture. That's a lie. Chloe shouted from the crowd, her face twisted with rage. He's a failed programmer. Marcus built everything. Did he? I finally spoke into the microphone, my voice calm, deep, and completely commanding the quiet room. Marcus, do you remember the intellectual property transfer papers you had me sign before my surgery? Marcus swallowed hard, sweat breaking out along his hairline. That was legal. You signed over full equity. You forgot one major legal clause in our original corporate charter, Marcus, I said, pulling my smartphone out from my jacket pocket. Article 9 of the Vance Dynamics bylaw states that any asset transfer executed while a founder is under medical distress without independent legal counsel is null and void upon written notification to the board. Marcus's eyes widened in absolute horror. Ethan, wait. Don't. I sent the formal notice to your board of directors 5 minutes ago, I said, looking down at my screen. And now, I'm sending the final evidence package. My thumb tapped the screen once. Sent. Complete forensic audit of Marcus Sterling's illegal transfer of funds and code. Before Marcus could utter another word, 3 high-profile board members of Vance Dynamics marched briskly down the central aisle, accompanied by 4 uniformed police officers and the hotel's senior security director. Marcus Sterling, the lead board member shouted, stopping right in front of the stage. We just received the audit logs. You used stolen intellectual property and falsified core assets to secure our venture backing. Board chairman, please? Marcus pleaded, turning to them with hands raised, his voice high-pitched and frantic. It's a misunderstanding. Ethan is lying. He's trying to sabotage us. The evidence is signed by independent forensic auditors, Marcus, the chairman snapped coldly. Effective immediately, the board of directors has voted to terminate your position as CEO. Your executive privileges are revoked, and all your personal and corporate assets have been frozen pending a full criminal investigation for corporate fraud. Frozen? Chloe shrieked, clutching Marcus's arm in terror. What do you mean frozen? What about the buyout money? There is no buyout money for fraud, ma'am, one of the police officers said firmly, stepping forward and placing a heavy hand on Marcus's shoulder. Mr. Sterling, you need to step away from the stage. You are coming with us for questioning. No. Get off me. Marcus yelled, thrashing against the officer's grip as metal handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Ethan, you can't do this to me. We were brothers. Brothers don't kick a man when he's down, Marcus, I said softly, looking down at him from the podium without a trace of anger. You taught me that business doesn't care about trust. I just took your advice. Chloe shrank back as the crowd pulled out their phones, taking photos and videos of Marcus being led away in handcuffs. She looked up at me on stage, her eyes wide with desperate, terrified realization. I turned back to the microphone, leaving them both behind in the chaos. The fall of Vance Dynamics was fast, brutal, and completely unforgiving. Within 48 hours of Marcus's arrest, news outlets splashed his mugshot across every financial network. Facing multiple counts of corporate fraud and facing complete personal bankruptcy, Marcus didn't hesitate to drag Chloe down with him. Leaked phone calls revealed them screaming at each other on the courthouse steps, blaming one another for the collapse of their stolen fortune. Marcus blamed Chloe for pushing him into a lavish lifestyle, while Chloe publicly accused him of deceiving her. I sat behind my dark mahogany desk on the top floor of the new Ether Systems building. Rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling glass, but inside my office was warm and quiet. A knock sounded at the double doors. My secretary stepped in looking slightly hesitant. "Mr. Vance," she said softly. "There's a woman down in the lobby insisting on seeing you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she claims it's urgent." "Who is it?" I asked. "Her name is Chloe Reed." Liam, who was sitting on the leather couch reviewing our Q1 balance sheets, looked up instantly. "Tell her to get lost, Ethan." I held up a quiet hand to my brother, then looked back at my secretary. "Send her up." "Ethan, are you serious?" Liam asked, standing up as the secretary walked out. "After everything she said to you in that coffee shop? After she left you when you were paralyzed on that couch?" "I'm not afraid of her, Liam," I said calmly. "I need to close this chapter once and for all." 2 minutes later, the door slid open. Chloe stepped inside, looking nothing like the woman who had mocked me weeks ago. Her hair was unwashed, her eyes red-rimmed, and her expensive designer coat was stained. She looked terrified, fragile, and desperate. "Ethan," she whispered, taking a trembling step toward my desk. "Chloe," I said, staying seated, my hands resting loosely on the wood. "What do you want?" I came to apologize," she sobbed, tears spilling down her cheeks. She took another frantic step forward, reaching out her trembling hands. "Ethan, please listen to me. Marcus manipulated me. He lied to me about everything. He told me you were never coming back from that facility, that you abandoned me." "He told you I abandoned you?" I asked, raising a single eyebrow. "Chloe, I walked into that boardroom 3 months after my surgery. You held his hand and told me I was pitiful. I was stupid. I was scared," she cried, dropping to her knees right in front of my desk, weeping hysterically. "I made a terrible mistake, Ethan. I still love you. I swear I do. Please help me. The banks are taking my house. The press is harassing me. Just give me another chance. We can rebuild our life together." I leaned forward, looking down at her. 8 months ago, seeing her beg like this would have broken my heart. It would have filled me with rage or agonizing pain. Now, as I looked at her, I felt nothing. No anger. No hatred. No love. Just pure, absolute indifference. "Get up, Chloe," I said quietly. She paused, wiping her nose with her sleeve, looking up at me with frantic hope in her eyes. "Ethan? I'm not going to sue you for your share of the stolen joint assets," I said smoothly. "And I'm not going to press civil charges against you." "Thank you," she gasped, standing up quickly. "Oh, thank you, Ethan. I knew you still cared." "I don't," I interrupted sharply, my voice ice cold. "I'm not sparing you out of kindness. I'm doing it because you simply aren't worth my time or energy anymore." Her face froze, the desperate smile sliding right off her lips. "What? You didn't love me when I was at my lowest, Chloe," I said, standing up and buttoning my tuxedo jacket. "You only love the security I provide. Marcus is broke, so you came crawling back to me. If I lost this company tomorrow, you would run away again. Ethan, please?" she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "Leave," I said, turning my back on her to face the floor-to-ceiling window. "Don't ever come to this building again." Silence fell over the room for 5 agonizing seconds. Then I heard the heavy click of her heels turning around, followed by the soft sound of the door closing behind her. Liam let out a long breath from the corner. "That was cold, man. But she deserved every bit of it." "It wasn't cold, Liam," I replied, looking at my reflection in the dark glass. "It was just the truth." The door opened again, and Dr. Evelyn Hayes walked in, holding 3 crystal glasses and a bottle of vintage champagne. "The board of directors just finalized the market rollout," Evelyn said, a rare, genuine smile gracing her sharp face. "Ether Systems officially controls 60% of the global enterprise network layer as of 5 minutes ago." "Vance Dynamics?" I asked. "Filed for Chapter 7 liquidation this afternoon," Evelyn replied, pouring 3 glasses and handing one to me and one to Liam. "Marcus is facing 5 to 7 years in federal prison for fraud. Karma took care of the rest." Liam held up his glass. "To the real CO. To finishing what Dad started," I corrected softly, clinking my glass against theirs. I took a slow sip of the champagne, looking out over the glowing city skyline below. I had lost my company, my money, and the woman I thought I loved. I had been dragged through the dirt and left for dead. But as I stood at the top of the world, surrounded by people who actually believed in me, I realized something vital. The fire didn't destroy me. It only burned away the dead weight. I was finally whole again.